It had been 5 years since Emma had last seen Nathan. Their relationship had ended abruptly, and they hadn't spoken since. He was once her everything, the person she thought she'd spend her life with. But life had a way of throwing unexpected twists, and Nathan was never able to overcome the pressure of being with someone successful, someone like Emma. He struggled, his career faltering while Emma soared, and eventually they drifted apart. The pain of that breakup still lingered in Emma's heart, but it was a pain she had learned to live with. As time passed, Emma met Ben. Ben was different, successful, confident, supportive. He treated Emma like she was the most important person in the world, and she couldn't help but fall in love with him. Their relationship had been effortless, and now, here they were, on the verge of marriage. Emma had always dreamed of her wedding day, but she never expected it to be complicated by Nathan. He had never truly disappeared from her life, lingering in the background with the occasional social media update, a reminder of the past she had long tried to forget. When she received the invitation, her first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of her. It read, "You're invited to celebrate the love of Emma and Ben, a momentous day for all." It had been a shock to receive an invitation from Nathan. After all, he had been the one to end things between them. Was it a courtesy? A formality, or something else? The invitation was a sharp reminder of her past, but Emma brushed it aside, determined not to let it ruin the excitement she felt about her wedding. She had moved on, she had to. The day was about her and Ben, and no one else. Yet there was a part of Emma that couldn't shake the feeling that Nathan would try to cause some kind of disruption. She had seen his posts on social media, heard whispers about his struggles. There was no way he'd come to her wedding in a state of confidence, and that thought alone gave her a sense of satisfaction. After all, wasn't she the one who had won? But deep down, Emma wondered what it would be like to see him again. Would he regret how things ended? Would he be a distant memory, a shadow of the person he used to be? As the wedding day approached, Emma's thoughts shifted between the joy of marrying Ben and the uncertainty of what Nathan's presence at the ceremony might bring. The one thing she was certain of was that this day would be a turning point in all their lives. What she didn't know yet, though, was how everything would unravel in a way no one could have predicted. The sun shone brightly on the morning of Emma's wedding, casting a golden glow over the venue. The soft hum of anticipation buzzed in the air as the guests began to fill the elegantly decorated hall. It was everything Emma had dreamed of. A perfect day. Her white gown, the fresh flowers lining the aisle, and the sparkling chandeliers above all added to the dreamlike atmosphere. Ben stood at the altar, looking every bit the part of the perfect groom. His smile was warm, and his eyes locked with Emma's as she made her way down the aisle, her heart swelling with love and excitement. She couldn't imagine a future without him. This was her moment. This was her happily ever after. But there was a gnawing unease at the back of her mind. She had yet to see Nathan. Her eyes scanned the crowd, the dread creeping up with each passing second. What was he doing here? Was he just another guest, or had he come to disrupt the most important day of her life? As she reached the altar and Ben gently took her hand, Emma's gaze found Nathan standing by the back, watching her with a look she couldn't quite read. He wasn't alone. He had a date by his side, a beautiful woman, well-dressed and confident, who seemed to be enjoying the attention. Nathan himself looked different, older, maybe more settled, but something in his eyes told Emma that he wasn't quite as at peace as she had imagined. For a moment Emma almost faltered, her eyes locked with his, and she felt the weight of the past crashing down on her. She quickly forced a smile, looking away as the ceremony began. There was no room for old wounds today. She was here with Ben, and nothing could ruin that. The vows were exchanged, the rings slipped on, and the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Emma's heart swelled with joy as she kissed Ben, the world outside the church fading away. The applause of their guests filled the air, but Emma couldn't ignore the presence of Nathan, standing there like a silent observer. As the reception began, the laughter and clinking of glasses filled the space. Emma and Ben mingled with their guests, exchanging pleasantries and enjoying the celebration, but the shadow of Nathan lingered. He stood in the corner, still watching her, his expression unreadable. His date whispered something in his ear, and he nodded absently. Then, just as Emma thought she could relax, she heard it, a loud, almost mocking voice from across the room. "Wow, Emma, I never thought I'd see the day. You really did well for yourself, huh? A perfect wedding, a rich man. I guess you finally found someone who could keep up with you. The voice was unmistakable, Nathan's. He had stepped forward, his words cutting through the air like a blade. Emma's stomach dropped. She had hoped for a smooth, peaceful day, but it seemed Nathan had other plans. Then, standing beside her, stiffened at the comment, his eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, Emma stepped forward, a calmness settling over her. She wasn't going to let Nathan ruin her day. "Excuse me, Nathan," Emma said, her voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. "I don't think this is the time or place for your commentary." Nathan chuckled softly, his date by his side now, looking somewhat amused by the drama. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend, but hey, you always liked having the upper hand, right?" Emma's heart began to race, the old wounds he'd left behind suddenly opening up again. She tried to steady herself, but the sting of his words lingered. The attention was now on them, the guests quietly observing. Ben moved closer to Emma, his protective instincts kicking in. He turned to Nathan, his voice firm. "If you're here to cause trouble, you should leave." But Nathan's smirk only grew wider. "I don't think you're in a position to tell me what to do, Ben. After all, I'm just here as a guest. Emma invited me." Emma felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't just an awkward moment anymore. This was turning into something much more unsettling. The tension in the room was palpable. Emma's mind raced as she tried to control the situation, but she could feel her composure slipping. Nathan had always been a master of getting under her skin, and he was doing it again, right in front of everyone. Ben's grip on her hand tightened, but Emma could sense the frustration building within him. He had never been one for conflict, always the calm and collected one, but this situation was pushing him to his limits. He wasn't about to let Nathan tarnish their special day. "Look, Nathan," Ben said, his voice calm but laced with warning. "I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't the time. We're here to celebrate, not to listen to your bitterness." Nathan laughed again, a bitter sound that sent a chill down Emma's spine. "Bitterness? Oh, I'm not bitter, Ben, but you know it's funny how things turn out, isn't it?" He turned his gaze to Emma, his eyes narrowing. "Here I am, just a reminder of the past, and there you are, pretending that you've got it all figured out. But Emma, do you really know who you're marrying?" Emma froze, the question hanging in the air like a threat. The room seemed to fall silent, the noise of the celebration around them fading into a hushed murmur. Ben stiffened beside her, his expression shifting from calm to confusion. "What are you talking about, Nathan?" Emma asked, her voice shaky but resolute. She wasn't going to let him twist the narrative. She wasn't going to let him drag her into a confrontation on her wedding day. Nathan's lips curled into a knowing smile. "You see, Ben's got a little secret, doesn't he?" He paused for dramatic effect, savoring the moment. "A secret that might just change the way you see him."
Hey.
Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She had always trusted Ben. He had been her rock, her safe place, but Nathan's words made something inside her stir. Doubt. Why would he say that? What could he possibly know about Ben? Ben's face paled, and Emma noticed his hand tightening around her own. His usual confidence seemed to waver, and for the first time she saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes.
Nathan.
"Whatever you think you know, it's not true," Ben said, his voice strained, but Nathan wasn't backing down. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper that only Emma could hear. "You really don't know, do you? The man you're about to marry has been hiding his past for years, and it's not just a small secret, Emma, it's a big one. Something that once you know, might make you question everything." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. She couldn't breathe. Her mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. What was Nathan talking about? What secret could Ben possibly be hiding? She turned to Ben, her heart hammering in her chest. "What is he talking about?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Ben met her gaze, his face a mask of shock and guilt. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, Nathan interjected. "You don't even know, do you? I guess that's what happens when you get caught up in the idea of the perfect life," Nathan said, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "But I'm not here to ruin your day, Emma. I'm just here to remind you that things aren't always as they seem. Emma felt her stomach twist in knots. She looked at Ben, searching his face for any sign of the truth, but all she saw was fear. Fear that, for some reason, seemed to be aimed at Nathan, not at her. For a long moment, there was silence. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. Emma's thoughts spiraled out of control. What did Nathan know? And why was Ben so visibly shaken? Finally, Ben spoke, his voice low and shaky. Emma, But before he could continue, there was a sudden loud noise from the back of the room. The doors flew open, and a man walked in, his face unmistakable. It was a familiar face, one Emma hadn't seen in years, a face from Ben's past. The room fell into an eerie silence as the man stepped forward. His appearance was startling, especially considering the timing. He was tall, with dark hair and piercing eyes, and although there was a quiet confidence about him, it was clear he wasn't here just as a guest. His gaze immediately sought out Ben, and when their eyes met, there was a flicker of recognition, followed by something darker, more intense. Emma's mind raced, but her legs felt like they were rooted to the spot. She turned to Ben, her heart hammering, her thoughts a blur of confusion and dread. Who was this man, and why was he here, now, on the most important day of her life? Ben's face had gone pale, the color draining from his cheeks. His posture stiffened, and Emma saw his hand tremble as it gripped hers. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Ben, the man called, his voice low and steady. It's been a long time. The words hit Ben like a physical blow. He didn't move, didn't speak. He simply stared at the man, as if frozen in place. Emma's mind struggled to connect the dots, to understand what was happening. Was this someone from Ben's past? A former friend? A rival? Who is this? Emma asked, her voice trembling.
You.
She didn't know what was happening, but she could feel the tension in the air thickening by the second. Ben opened his mouth, but nothing came out. It was like the words were stuck in his throat. The man who had entered the room took another step forward, his eyes never leaving Ben. I thought you'd be more excited to see me, Ben, the man said, his voice oozing with sarcasm. But I guess after all these years, I shouldn't be surprised that you've moved on, pretending like nothing ever happened. Emma's head spun. What had happened? What was this man talking about? Ben finally spoke, but his voice was strained. Daniel, I told you this was over. Leave now. Daniel? Emma felt a chill run down her spine as the name sank in. She had heard that name before, but it didn't make sense. Daniel was someone from Ben's past, someone who had disappeared a long time ago. Ben had never mentioned him, at least not in any meaningful way. Why hadn't he told her about him? Over? Daniel chuckled darkly. You think it's over? You think you can just bury the past and move on like it never happened? He shook his head, a mocking smile playing on his lips. Well, Ben, it's not over, not for me, and not for you. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she turned to Ben. What is he talking about? Her voice was almost a whisper, the question hanging heavy in the air. Ben's face crumpled, and for the first time, Emma saw the weight of guilt in his eyes. His secret was no longer just a whisper in the back of her mind. It was standing right in front of her. Daniel looked at Emma, his smile growing wider. You really don't know, do you? Ben didn't tell you, did he? He didn't tell you about the things he's done, the people he's hurt. Ben's hands clenched into fists. Daniel, stop. But it was too late. Daniel was determined to expose whatever it was he had on Ben. Emma, I think it's time you knew the truth about your perfect fiancé, Daniel said, his voice dripping with contempt. Ben isn't who he says he is. He's been hiding from the consequences of his actions for years. And now, well, I think it's time everyone knew what kind of man he really is. Emma stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Her thoughts were in a whirl, the words echoing in her mind. What was Daniel talking about? What was Ben hiding? She turned to Ben again, desperate for answers, but he couldn't look her in the eye. The silence between them was deafening. The room was no longer filled with celebration. It was filled with questions, uncertainty, and the heavy weight of betrayal. I didn't want this, Emma, Ben whispered, his voice barely audible. But I'll explain. I swear I will. Emma felt a wave of nausea hit her as she looked at the man she had planned to spend her life with. The man who in that moment seemed like a stranger. What had he been hiding from her? Why hadn't he told her the truth? Before she could say anything more, Nathan spoke up again, his voice filled with dark amusement. Well, Emma, looks like your perfect wedding just took a turn, didn't it? The guests were murmuring, whispering, their eyes flicking between Ben and Daniel, unsure of what to make of this strange confrontation. Emma's chest tightened with each passing second. Her mind raced, but no answers were coming. And then in a quiet voice, Daniel added, I think it's time for Emma to learn the real reason Ben's here today. The real reason he wanted to marry her. Emma's heart skipped a beat as her stomach dropped. What could that possibly mean? The room was suffocating. The silence after Daniel's words felt like an eternity. Emma's head was spinning. The pieces of the puzzle that had once seemed so clear, the perfect wedding, the perfect fiancé, were now fractured, shattered by the weight of Daniel's words. She couldn't breathe. She needed answers, but Ben was still standing there, frozen, unable to speak. Daniel took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Emma's. You want to know why Ben chose you? It wasn't for love, Emma, he said, his voice smooth, almost too calm. He needed you. He needed someone like you to fix his image, to make him look like he had it all together. But deep down, he's still the same man who ran from his past, the same man who's responsible for ruining lives. Emma's hands trembled at her sides. The words felt like a slap, each one stinging deeper than the last. What do you mean? She finally managed to whisper. What did he do? Daniel smiled, the cruel edge to his expression never leaving. Ben doesn't want you to know that he's been hiding from the consequences of his mistakes. You think he's this perfect, successful man, don't you? But the truth is, he's running from the debts he owes, debts to people he's wronged, people like me. His voice dropped, becoming colder. Ben's been hiding behind the life he's built, but he can't outrun his past forever. Emma's head was reeling. Ben, is this true? She asked, her voice shaking as she turned to him, desperate for an explanation. What is he talking about? Ben finally moved, but his steps were slow, hesitant. He reached for Emma's hand, his grip firm, but his eyes were filled with regret. Emma, I didn't want you to find out like this. I didn't want to hurt you. Her heart sank, the truth slowly beginning to seep in. What did you do, Ben? She asked again, her voice quieter this time, a fragile whisper. What are you hiding from me? Ben swallowed hard, his face filled with torment. He took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to finally speak the truth. I'm not who you think I am, Emma. I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I've been trying to make up for them, trying to outrun my past, but I couldn't tell you about it. I thought I could protect you from the truth, but I see now that I've only lied to you. Emma's mind was racing, her thoughts clashing with each other. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Everything she had thought was real, the love, the life they had planned, was now in question. What have you done, Ben? She asked again, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes searching his face for any hint of the man she thought she knew. Ben's voice cracked as he spoke. I used to be involved in illegal business deals. I got in too deep, and when things went wrong, I owed people, dangerous people, money. I tried to pay it back, but the more I did, the deeper I got. Emma felt like the ground beneath her was slipping away. The man she had planned to marry, the man she had trusted with her heart, had been hiding a dark secret, and now everything was falling apart. I thought I could leave it behind, Ben continued, his voice filled with guilt. When I met you, I thought I could finally start over. You gave me a chance to rebuild my life, to make things right, but I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I didn't want to lose you. Emma's chest tightened, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the weight of everything she had just learned. The man she had trusted, the man she was about to marry, was hiding a past she could never have imagined. But Daniel wasn't finished. He stepped forward again, his voice full of bitterness. Ben thought he could escape, But I was there, every step of the way, reminding him of the debts he owed. He never told you the whole truth, Emma. He's been lying to you this entire time. Ben flinched at Daniel's words, his eyes flashing with anger. That's not true. I'm not the same person I was back then, Daniel. But Daniel wasn't backing down. You think you can change, Ben. You think you can just walk away from everything you've done. You're not fooling anyone. Emma stood frozen, her heart torn in two. She didn't know what to do with the information she had just learned. The man she had loved, the man she had believed was her future, was not the man he appeared to be, and yet she still loved him. She wanted to believe that he could change, that he could be the man she thought he was. But the truth was too overwhelming, too painful. The room was quiet now, the once joyful atmosphere replaced by an uncomfortable tension. Emma felt the weight of everyone's eyes on her, but she couldn't move. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to feel. Finally, Ben spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Emma. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she looked at him. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that he was still the man she had fallen in love with. But how could she? Emma stood there, frozen in a storm of emotions. Her heart was shattered, and her mind was a mess of conflicting thoughts. She loved Ben, she truly did, but the man standing before her now wasn't the one she had imagined. He wasn't the man she had pledged to marry just hours ago. He wasn't the perfect fiancé she had believed him to be. Ben's eyes were filled with anguish, his voice trembling as he spoke again. Please, Emma, don't leave me like this. I know I've made mistakes, but I've spent years trying to change, trying to be better. I've done things that I regret, and I'm not proud of them, but I'm not that man anymore. I swear I'm not. Emma's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to take him in her arms and tell him that it would all be okay, that she could forgive him, and they could move forward together. But how could she? How could she ignore everything he had hidden from her? I don't know what to do, Emma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I wanted this day to be perfect. I wanted you to be the man I thought you were. But now, I don't even know who you are anymore. Ben took a step forward, his hand reaching out to her, but she took a step back, the space between them growing. Emma, please. I don't want to lose you. I can't lose you. Daniel, still watching from the side, folded his arms and gave a smug smile. You might as well face it, Ben. It's over. You can't hide who you really are anymore. Not from her. Not from anyone. Emma turned to look at Daniel, her eyes burning with a mix of anger and confusion. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Why are you trying to tear us apart? Daniel's expression hardened. Because he deserves to face the truth, Emma. He's been running from it for years, and you deserve to know who you're marrying, don't you? His words hit Emma like a slap, and for a moment she felt like she was drowning. She had trusted Ben, she had believed in him, in their future together, but now all of that was unraveling in front of her. The life she thought they had was a lie. The perfect picture of love and security had been shattered by the weight of the truth. She turned back to Ben, her eyes searching his face for any sign of the man she once knew, the man who had held her in his arms and promised to love her forever. Was he still that person? Could he still be that person? I don't know if I can do this, Ben, she said, her voice breaking as tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. Ben's face crumpled in pain and he reached out again. But Emma stepped back once more. Please, he pleaded. I'll do anything. I'll prove it to you. I'll prove that I've changed. Just don't leave me. For a moment, Emma was silent, her eyes fixed on the man she had once loved with all her heart. She felt the weight of the decision pressing on her chest, squeezing out all the air. She had dreamed of this day, of their life together, but now it felt like a dream slipping through her fingers, falling apart. Daniel's voice interrupted her thoughts. You know what, Emma? It's not just about him. It's about you too. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life with a man who has so many secrets? A man who has been hiding the truth from you this entire time? Do you really want to risk everything for someone who can't even be honest with you? The words cut deep, and Emma turned to him, her voice shaking with emotion. You don't know anything about what I want, she snapped. I'm not doing this because of you. I'm doing it because of me, because I need to decide if I can live with this. There was a long pause, a thick silence that hung between them. Emma looked from Ben to Daniel, then back to Ben. Her heart was in turmoil, torn between the man she had loved and the man who had betrayed her trust. Ben's eyes were pleading, and Emma could see the desperation in them. Please, Emma. I need you. I love you. I can change. I can be better. Just give me a chance. Emma closed her eyes, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a ton of bricks. She didn't know what to believe anymore. She didn't know who to trust. Her entire world had just been shattered, and now she had to decide whether to walk away from everything she had ever wanted or to take a leap of faith and trust that Ben could be the man he promised to be. The air felt thick, suffocating, and Emma's heart ached as she faced the hardest choice of her life. Emma's heart felt like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces. The love she had felt for Ben was still there, but it was tangled now, knotted in with doubt, fear, and the crushing weight of betrayal. She had trusted him with everything, her heart, her future, her dreams, and now those dreams were slipping through her fingers like sand. Ben stood there, his hands trembling at his sides, his eyes wide with an intensity she had never seen before. He was pleading, silently begging her to believe in him again, to give him another chance. But how could she? The truth hung in the air, suffocating her. Every word Daniel had said, every secret Ben had hidden, it all made the life she had imagined with him feel like a lie. How could she trust him again? How could she even look at him without wondering what else he had kept from her? The room was silent except for the soft hum of conversation from the guests who had been watching the entire scene unfold. Emma didn't know if she could bear it any longer, if she could stand in this room full of people while her world was falling apart. Ben stepped closer, his voice hoarse. Emma, please, don't let this be the end. Emma turned to him, her chest tight with emotion. I don't know if I can believe you anymore, Ben. Everything you've told me feels like it's been a lie. How do I know you won't hide more from me? How do I know I can trust you with my heart again? Ben flinched as if her words were a blow, but he didn't look away. I know I've hurt you. I've lied to you, and I regret it more than you could ever know. But I love you, Emma, and I've spent every day since I met you trying to be better, trying to make up for the person I used to be. I'm not perfect, but I am trying, and I need you to see that. I need you to see that. I can be the man you thought I was. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted so badly to believe him. She wanted to fall into his arms and forget all the hurt, all the lies. She wanted to pretend that everything would be okay, that they could move forward and live the life they had always dreamed of. But something inside her hesitated. She could feel the weight of her own heart, the fear of making the wrong choice. If she forgave him, would she be setting herself up for even more pain? Would she always wonder what other truths he was hiding from her? The silence stretched on, unbearable and thick. Daniel stood by, watching, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were gleaming with something close to satisfaction. He had said what he needed to say. He had exposed the cracks in Ben's armor, and now it was up to Emma to decide what to do with the truth. Finally, Emma spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. I love you, Ben. I always have. But love isn't enough to make me forget what you've done. It's not enough to erase the lies. Ben's face crumpled, and for a moment Emma saw the pain of someone who had lost everything. The man she had once thought she would marry, the man she had thought she knew, was standing before her, broken. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words heavy with regret. Emma closed her eyes, the tears threatening to spill over. She couldn't do this. She couldn't stand here and pretend that everything was okay. She had given him a chance, but in the end, the truth was too much. The betrayal cut too deep. I can't do this, Ben, she said, her voice breaking. I can't marry you. I can't live in a future filled with secrets. I deserve more than that. There was a long pause, a moment of complete stillness, and then Ben stepped back, his face pale. I understand, he said softly. his voice barely above a whisper. The finality in his words shattered Emma's heart. She had always thought she would marry him. She had always thought they would have the life they had dreamed of. But now that dream was gone, replaced by an aching emptiness. I hope you find the peace you're looking for, Ben, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion, but I can't be part of your future. With that, she turned away from him, feeling the eyes of the room on her as she made her way to the exit. The world outside was silent, the air cool against her tear-streaked face. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know how she would heal from this, how she would move forward. But she knew one thing. She couldn't stay in a place where lies had built the foundation of her dreams. As she walked away, the sound of her heels echoing in the empty hallway, she realized that sometimes love wasn't enough to overcome the truth, and sometimes you had to let go of the past to move forward into the future. Months later, Emma stood on the balcony of her apartment, gazing out over the city. It had been hard, every day had felt like an uphill battle, but she had found strength in herself she hadn't known existed. She had learned to trust her own instincts, to put her own happiness first. The scars from her past were still there, but they no longer defined her. She was moving on, one step at a time, and with each passing day, she was reclaiming her life. As for Ben, Emma hadn't seen him again after that day. She didn't know what happened to him, but she hoped he had found a way to make peace with his past. She didn't wish him ill, she just knew that their paths were no longer meant to cross. And for Emma, that was enough. She had learned that sometimes the hardest decisions were the ones that led to the brightest futures. Thank you so much for reading this story. We hope you found it as emotional and gripping as we intended. It's a journey of love, betrayal, and ultimately finding the strength to move forward. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest growth, and Emma's journey is a testament to that. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible tales, and share this story with your friends and family. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to comment below and let us know what you think, or if you want to see more stories like this. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for being part of this amazing journey.